There is a trembling in the earth, a whisper in the wind, a message wrapped in the folds of time itself. The air is thick with unspoken warnings, signs etched not in ink, but in the very fabric of our days. Do you hear it? Do you feel it? A shadow passes over the sun, and the weight of things unseen presses against the soul. There is something shifting, something coming, something long foretold, yet so quickly dismissed. And now, here we stand at the edge of knowing, at the brink of consequence. We were told, but did we listen? The world moves at a furious pace, cities rising and falling, voices clamoring for attention, distractions wrapping themselves around us like chains of silk. People turn away from truth because it is inconvenient, because it does not fit their desires. They mock what they do not understand, laugh at what they should heed. They say, times have changed, as if wisdom expires like spoiled milk. But warnings do not grow old. They do not lose their power. They do not fade simply because one refuses to see. There are hands grasping at the sky, fists shaking at what they refuse to acknowledge. People worship at the altar of self, building temples to their own desires, chasing after things that slip through their fingers like grains of sand. Greed swells in their chests, pride lifts their chins, and they call it progress. They take and they take, never asking at what cost. They bend the truth until it no longer resembles itself, fashioning it into something more palatable, something that does not demand change. But warnings come before the storm. They are the hush before the thunder, the whisper before the roar. And this warning, it was given long ago, spoken through the ages, passed down through time like an inheritance of wisdom. It tells of days when hearts will grow cold, when love will be a currency spent cheaply, when lies will be dressed as truth, and truth will be trampled underfoot. It speaks of a world intoxicated with its own power, blind to the collapse beneath its feet. It speaks of deception so sweet, so well packaged, that even the wisest might be fooled. Look around. Do you see it? Do you feel the weight of it pressing against your chest? The signs are not hidden. They are written in the way men speak with honeyed tongues, but strike with poisoned hands. They are painted across the headlines, draped over the laughter of those who have silenced their conscience. They are in the arrogance of those who believe they are untouchable, who believe they can rewrite the very laws of existence without consequence. There is a deep hunger in the soul of the world, but it is fed with empty promises. They chase after fulfillment in the hollow places, in the fleeting pleasures, in the temporary highs. They want to be gods of their own making, architects of their own fate. They push away the old wisdom, calling it outdated, unnecessary. But the truth does not grow weary. It does not break under the weight of denial. It waits, steady and unshaken, even as the world spins itself into deeper darkness. And the children, oh, the children, they are raised in a world that has abandoned the very foundation of wisdom. They are taught that up is down, that wrong is right, that feelings are truer than truth itself. They wander in a fog of confusion, led by those who do not know the way. The elders no longer teach because they, too, have forgotten. The young cry out for meaning, for purpose, but they are given only distractions, only noise. People run from the storm, but they do not know they have built their houses on sinking sand. They think they are safe because the walls are high, because the lights are bright, because the music is loud enough to drown out the sound of approaching footsteps. But walls crumble, lights flicker, music fades. And when all falls silent, when the ground gives way, where will they stand? It was said that there would come a time when people would close their ears to wisdom, when they would chase after the wind, grasping at empty things. It was said that they would love pleasure more than truth, that they would trade eternal things for the temporary thrill of now. It was said that they would call darkness light and light darkness. And here we are. Here we stand with eyes that see but refuse to recognize, with ears that hear but choose to ignore. The warning was given, but who has listened? The call was made, but who has answered? The truth was spoken, but who has embraced it? There is still a moment, a pause before the final act, a breath before the last note is played. But moments are not eternal. They pass like shadows across the ground, like mist that disappears with the rising sun. There is a choice to be made, a path to be chosen. The warning has been given. The message has been spoken. The question is not whether it is real, whether it is true. The question is, will you listen? The earth groans beneath the weight of the choices made upon it. It cries out in the silence of the night, in the tremble of the ground, in the shifting of the seas. The trees stand as witnesses, their roots deep in the soil of generations past, remembering what was once held sacred. The rivers carve their stories into the land, whispering of things forgotten, of laws broken, of a balance disturbed. And yet, the world moves forward as if it cannot hear, as if it does not see, as if the warning signs are nothing more than the rustling of leaves in an idle wind. But the wind does not move without reason. It carries voices from the past, echoes of truth long spoken, long ignored. It is there in the hush before the storm, in the stillness before the chaos. The world stands on the edge of something great and terrible, but few recognize it for what it is. They laugh at those who speak of consequence, call them fearful, call them foolish, call them bound by old ways. They build their own towers of reason, stacking bricks of arrogance upon the foundation of pride. They believe themselves wise, but their wisdom is an illusion. Their knowledge a mirage that vanishes when thirst comes upon them. There is a sickness spreading, not of the body, but of the soul. It is a slow decay, a creeping numbness, a quiet erasure of things that once held meaning. People have become lovers of themselves, consumed by their own desires, their own pleasures, their own cravings. They bow before the image in the mirror, feeding it, adoring it, exalting it above all else. Their hearts have become hard, their minds closed, their spirits blind to the truth that once burned so brightly. They reject the warnings, not because they cannot understand, but because they do not want to. They say the world is more advanced than ever, that knowledge has increased, that man has reached new heights. They speak of progress, of enlightenment, of breaking free from the chains of the past, but they do not see that their chains are of their own making. They do not see that the wisdom they cast aside was the very thing that held them upright, the very thing that kept them from falling into the abyss. Look around, see the anger that fills the streets, the hatred that burns in the eyes of those who were meant to love. See the division, the discord, the breaking apart of what was once whole. Families torn asunder, friendships shattered, communities divided. People are more connected than ever, yet lonelier than they have ever been. They reach out, but their hands grasp at nothing. They speak, but their words are empty, echoes of things that once held meaning, but have since been hollowed out. They rewrite the meaning of right and wrong, bending it to fit their desires, molding it into something that does not demand change. They call it freedom, but they do not see the chains wrapped around their wrists, the shackles upon their feet. They run toward destruction with open arms, believing it to be salvation. They blind themselves to the truth because it is inconvenient, because it calls them to a higher standard, because it demands that they turn away from the things they have learned to love. But warnings are not given without reason. They are not spoken into the void for no purpose. They are the hand on the shoulder before the fall, the voice in the dark before the pit is reached. They are the final call before the doors are closed, before the window of grace is sealed shut. They are not spoken to cause fear, but to awaken, not given to control, but to set free. Yet, freedom is a choice, and choices have consequences. The world is at a turning point, standing at the crossroads of what was and what is to come. The days grow darker, the shadows stretch longer, the signs become clearer. Those who still listen, those who still see, those who still feel the weight of what is coming, they know. They know that the time for ignorance has passed. They know that what has been spoken is unfolding before their very eyes. And yet, so many continue as if nothing is happening, as if the world will always turn as it has, as if tomorrow is guaranteed. They do not understand that shifts this great, warnings this loud, do not come without reason. They do not understand that history does not repeat itself without cause, that cycles of destruction follow patterns long established. They laugh at the idea that anything could change, that their way of life could be disrupted. They call it fear-mongering. They call it foolishness. They call it unnecessary. But when the winds rise and the ground shakes, when the sky darkens and the seas swell, when the very fabric of what they knew begins to unravel, what will they say then? Some will wake up too late. Some will only see the truth when it is impossible to ignore. Some will cry out for what they rejected, only to find that the doors they once slammed shut will not open so easily. Some will remember the words they laughed at, the warnings they dismissed, the truth they trampled underfoot, and they will wonder why they did not listen when they had the chance. But for those who still have ears to hear, for those whose hearts are not yet hardened, for those who feel the tremble in their spirit and know it is not for nothing, there is still time. Time to turn away from the deception that has wrapped itself around the world like a shroud. Time to let go of the empty things, the fleeting things, the things that offer no true peace. Time to seek what was once forgotten, to remember what was once known, to return to the place where truth stands unmoved by the shifting tides of the world. For the warnings were never meant to be ignored. They were never meant to be silenced. They were never meant to be brushed aside like the foolish ramblings of the old and weary. They were meant to awaken, to shake the complacent from their slumber, to remind the world that it does not own itself, that it is not beyond consequence, that there is still an order, still a truth, still a law that cannot be rewritten by the hands of men. The days ahead are not promised to be easy. The road is not promised to be smooth. But for those who listen, for those who see, for those who understand, there is a path, a way that leads through the storm, a way that is steady when all else crumbles, a way that does not bend to the whims of man, does not break under the weight of deception, does not falter in the face of darkness. The world will shake, the foundations will be tested, and many will be found wanting. But for those who heed the warning, for those who stand firm, for those who choose truth over comfort, wisdom over folly, light over shadow, they will not be shaken. They will not be lost. They will not be consumed by the chaos that threatens to swallow the world whole. For the warning has been given, the voice has spoken, the signs are clear, and now the choice remains. Will you listen? Will you see? Will you understand before it is too late? The weight of time presses heavily upon the shoulders of those who can still discern truth from illusion. The air is thick with urgency, with an unshakable knowing that what was long whispered in the halls of eternity is now unfolding before the eyes of the blind. The signs were never hidden, only ignored. They were never obscure, only inconvenient. And so the world stumbles forward, pretending not to notice the unraveling of all that once held it together. People have trained their hearts to be deaf to warnings, convinced that the way of things will always remain as it is. They have been lulled into a deep sleep, cradled in the arms of false security, rocked by the lullaby of distraction. They do not question, they do not seek, they do not wonder why their souls feel restless, why their spirits feel heavy. They fill the emptiness with noise, with indulgence, with endless pursuit of what cannot satisfy. They decorate their cages and call it freedom. They silence the small voice within, convincing themselves that their comfort is worth the cost of truth. But comfort is a fragile thing when built upon shifting sand. It is a mirage that disappears the moment the heat of reality presses against it. And now the world trembles. The systems once thought unbreakable begin to crack. The illusions once upheld as unshakable begin to falter. What was hidden is being revealed. What was dismissed as the paranoia of the wise is now undeniable. And yet, many will still refuse to see. They will cling to their blindness as if it were salvation, shielding their eyes from what is clear, closing their ears to what is undeniable. They will call it coincidence. They will call it nothing more than the natural way of things. They will cling to their own explanations, their own reasoning, their own fragile understanding, because to admit otherwise would mean to confront the depth of their deception. It would mean to acknowledge that they were wrong, that they were warned, that they chose to walk toward destruction with their eyes wide open. But there are those who feel the weight of the times pressing upon their spirits, those who cannot shake the unease settling into their bones. They see the world changing in ways that are not natural, in ways that are not simply a cycle repeating itself. They recognize that something has shifted, something deep and irreversible. They watch as men exalt themselves higher and higher, as nations crumble under the weight of their own arrogance, as morality is rewritten to suit the desires of the flesh. They watch as truth is ridiculed, as wisdom is cast aside like an old garment that no longer fits the fashion of the times. They see the signs written in the corruption of power, in the unraveling of family, in the distortion of love itself. They hear the voices calling good evil and evil good. They watch as people are led like cattle to the slaughter, following blindly the voices that promise liberation but deliver chains. The deception is not new, only more refined. It is not unfamiliar, only more enticing. It has been clothed in new garments, given a new name, but its poison remains the same. It whispers to the masses that they are gods of their own destiny, that they are the authors of their own morality, that there is no consequence to their choices, only the pursuit of pleasure. It tells them that warnings are for the weak, that caution is for the fearful, that those who hesitate to embrace the world's new ways are simply lost in the past. And so they move forward, never questioning where the path leads. They silence their doubts, numb their unease, drown out the still, small voice that pleads for them to reconsider. They are given everything they desire, and yet they are empty. They have all that they once believed would bring fulfillment, and yet they are hollow. They chase after more, not realizing that they are not filling themselves, but emptying themselves further. They laugh in the daylight, but weep in the darkness. They dance in the streets, but tremble in the silence. And the children, their innocent minds shaped before they even have a chance to understand the world, are fed the same lies, are led down the same roads, are taught that up is down, that falsehood is truth, that identity is whatever one wills it to be. They are born into a world that no longer knows its own foundation, that no longer respects the laws written into the very essence of existence. They are given freedom with no guidance, choice with no wisdom, power with no understanding of its consequences. And so they grow into people who do not know what it means to be whole, who do not know what it means to be grounded in something unshakable. There is a fire spreading, a consuming blaze, not of destruction but of unveiling. It burns away illusion, exposing what has long been hidden in darkness. It is merciless in its truth, stripping away the false security of those who believe they could rewrite the nature of existence. It is a light that cannot be extinguished, no matter how fiercely the world tries to smother it. It is an awakening, an undeniable revelation of what has been unfolding beneath the surface all along. And those who have listened, those who have paid attention, those who have held on to wisdom despite the ridicule, despite the pressure, despite the cost, they are not surprised. They are not shaken. They are not afraid, because they knew this time would come. They knew that the warnings were not idle threats, not meaningless words. They knew that history was not moving in circles, but in a spiral, leading towards something inevitable. They do not rejoice in the downfall of the blind, nor do they gloat over the consequences that now unfold. Their hearts are heavy with the sorrow of knowing that so many had the chance to turn back, but refused. So many heard the warnings, but mocked them. So many saw the signs, but chose to ignore them. And now they stand in the midst of what they once claimed would never come, bewildered, lost, searching for answers they had once rejected. And yet, even now, there is still a choice. Even as the ground shakes, even as the winds rise, even as the voices of deception grow louder, there is still a moment in which to turn. There is still time to break free from the illusion, to step away from the path that leads to destruction. There is still a chance to choose wisdom over folly, truth over deception, light over darkness. But that moment will not last forever. That window will not remain open indefinitely. The world is on the edge, teetering between what was and what is to come. The warnings have been given, the signs are clear, the call has gone forth. Now, the question remains, who will listen? Who will see? Who will have the courage to reject the lies, to embrace the truth, to stand firm even as the world trembles? The days ahead will not be easy. The weight of what is coming will press heavily upon those who remain awake. But they will not stand alone. They will not be without strength. They will not be without guidance. For though the darkness grows, though deception spreads like wildfire, there is still a light that cannot be overcome, still a truth that cannot be erased, still a foundation that cannot be broken. The time for apathy is over. The time for ignoring the signs has passed. The time for pretending that the world is not shifting beneath our feet is gone. The choice is now. The moment is now. And those who have ears to hear, let them hear. Those who have eyes to see, let them see. Those who feel the weight of this truth pressing upon their souls, let them not delay. The warning has been given. The call has been made. And now only one question remains. What will you do with what you have heard? There is a silence before the breaking, a pause before the final thread unravels. It is the moment where time holds its breath, waiting to see who will turn, who will awaken, who will step away from the edge before it is too late. But the world, intoxicated by its own illusion, does not see the storm that gathers just beyond the horizon. It does not hear the distant thunder, does not feel the shift in the winds. It continues to dance on fragile ground, oblivious to the cracks forming beneath its feet. There was once a time when people feared wisdom, not because it was cruel, but because it demanded something of them. It required change, required humility, required the surrender of pride. But now, wisdom is mocked, cast aside like an old book with pages too worn to be of use. People hunger for knowledge but reject understanding. They chase after enlightenment but despise truth. They seek power without responsibility, freedom without boundaries, pleasure without consequence. They believe themselves untouchable, rulers of their own destiny, masters of a world they did not create. They do not realize that even the strongest tower crumbles when its foundation is made of sand. They do not see that what they have built is not a fortress but a prison, not a sanctuary but a trap of their own making. They have exchanged the eternal for the temporary, the unshakable for the fleeting, the real for the illusion. And now, the illusion begins to fade. What happens when the distractions are stripped away, when the lights dim, when the noise dies down, when there is nothing left but silence? That is when the truth comes rushing in, uninvited, undeniable. That is when the weight of reality settles upon the shoulders of those who spent their days chasing shadows. That is when the warnings they once ignored become the only thing they can remember. But by then, will there be time to turn back? Will there be time to undo what has been done? The earth itself groans under the weight of corruption. The skies darken under the weight of deception. The world is not what it once was, nor will it ever be again. There is a trembling beneath the surface, an unraveling of things long thought secure. The very nature of existence is being rewritten, reshaped, redefined, and those who refuse to comply are cast out, ridiculed, silenced. Truth is no longer welcome in a world that thrives on deception. The masses march to the rhythm of a song they did not compose, repeating words they do not understand, following paths they did not choose. They call it progress, but it is only captivity dressed in finer garments. They call it liberation, but the chains have only been made invisible. They call it enlightenment, but the darkness has only grown deeper. And still, the warnings go unheeded. Still, the signs are dismissed. Still, the call to turn back is drowned out by the roar of those who refuse to listen. They demand that all join them in their blindness, that all bow before the idols they have built, that all silence the voice within that pleads for them to reconsider. They will tolerate anything except truth, embrace anything except wisdom, accept anything except the idea that they are not in control. But control is an illusion, a fragile thing that slips through the fingers of those who grasp it too tightly. The winds do not obey the will of man, nor do the tides pause for his convenience. The laws of existence do not bend to the desires of those who wish to rewrite them. There is an order to things, a rhythm woven into the fabric of time, a truth that does not change with the whims of a shifting world. The deception runs deep, wrapping itself around hearts and minds like a vice. It is not merely a lie, but an entire way of thinking, an entire system of belief built upon falsehoods so intricately woven that many do not even realize they are trapped. It is in the way people speak, in the way they live, in the choices they make without ever questioning why. It is in the way history is erased, in the way truth is rewritten, in the way those who still remember are silenced. And yet, for all its power, deception cannot stand against the weight of truth. No matter how deeply buried, no matter how fiercely denied, truth will always rise. It is patient, unwavering, relentless. It does not change to accommodate the comfort of the masses, does not shrink before the arrogance of those who mock it. It waits, steady and unshaken, knowing that in the end, it will be the only thing that remains. The wise do not fear the unraveling, for they knew it was coming. They do not tremble as the world shakes, for their foundation was never built upon what can be moved. They do not waver as deception spreads, for their eyes have seen beyond the illusion. They do not weep as the towers fall, for they never put their trust in what was bound to collapse. But their hearts are heavy, for they know that many will not wake up in time. They know that many will cling to their blindness even as the world around them crumbles. They know that many will refuse to listen until the very last moment, and by then, The moment may have passed. Still, the choice remains. It has always been a choice. No one is forced to see. No one is forced to listen. No one is forced to acknowledge what has been written since the beginning of time. But the choice does not come without consequence. To ignore truth is to embrace the lie. To reject wisdom is to welcome deception. To refuse to turn back is to continue forward no matter where the path may lead. And now the days grow shorter. The weight of time presses heavier. The urgency in the air becomes undeniable. The world is not as it was, nor will it ever be again. The warnings are not for the past, but for the present. Not for another time, but for now. The storm does not wait for permission to arrive. The unraveling does not pause for those who refuse to see. The breaking does not hold back for those who still cling to what is already lost. For those who can still hear, for those who can still see, for those who can still feel the weight of this moment pressing upon their spirit, the time is now. The call is now. The choice is now. The warnings have been spoken. The signs have been given. The truth has been revealed. The question is no longer whether the world will continue as it is. The question is no longer whether the warnings were real. The question is no longer whether there is a shift taking place. The only question that remains is this: what will you do now? The hour grows late, and yet the world continues in its slumber. The weight of the times presses upon the earth, but few feel it, few acknowledge it, few dare to face it. There is an unraveling, a shifting, a tearing away of all that was once held secure. The air is thick with change, not the kind that comes gently, but the kind that uproots, the kind that shakes foundations, the kind that leaves nothing untouched. The whispers of yesterday have become the shouts of today, but still, many turn away. Still, they pretend that nothing is different, that life will continue as it always has, that they can mold the world to fit their desires without consequence. But consequence is a patient thing. It does not rush, it does not force, it does not demand immediate attention. It simply waits, knowing that its time will come, knowing that no amount of denial can erase what has been set in motion. The world has been given over to its desires, allowed to chase after what it longed for, permitted to taste the fruit of its own choosing. And now, as the sweetness fades, as the aftertaste turns bitter, as the illusion begins to crack, there is a stirring, a restlessness, an unease that cannot be ignored. People feel it in their bones, sense it in the air, recognize it in the eyes of those around them. But still, they do not speak of it. Still, they do not name it. Still, they pretend that if they do not acknowledge it, it will disappear. But truth does not disappear. It does not fade, does not dissolve, does not yield to the will of those who would rather remain blind. It stands, steady and unmoving, waiting to be seen, waiting to be heard, waiting for those who will not be swayed by the voices that seek to drown it out. But those voices are loud, louder than ever before, shouting, demanding, forcing their way into every corner of existence. They rewrite history, redefine morality, reshape reality itself. And the world follows, not because it is convinced, but because it is afraid. Fear has become the guiding force of this age. Fear of rejection, fear of standing alone, fear of being cast out for daring to question the narrative. People trade their convictions for acceptance, their integrity for belonging, their wisdom for the illusion of peace. They convince themselves that silence is survival, that compromise is wisdom, that to question is to betray. But in the depths of their souls, there is no peace, there is no security, there is no rest. They know that they are standing on sinking sand, but they are too afraid to reach for the solid ground. The world is moving towards something inevitable, something irreversible, something that has been foretold since the beginning. But few are prepared, few have eyes to see, few have hearts that are willing to accept what is now undeniable. The time of warnings is slipping away, the window of choice growing smaller with each passing day. And yet the world continues as if time itself is endless, as if consequences will never come, as if the path they walk does not have an end. But all roads lead somewhere. All choices bear fruit. All actions reap a harvest. And the world is beginning to taste the bitter fruit of what it has sown. It has rejected wisdom, and now it is drowning in confusion. It has cast aside truth, and now it is lost in deception. It has ridiculed morality, and now it is consumed by corruption. It has embraced the darkness, and now it is blind to the light. The unraveling is not coming, it is already here. The deception is not a future threat, it is already at work. The world is not on the brink, it has already crossed the threshold. And yet, even now, many refuse to see, refuse to hear, refuse to believe that the course has already been set. They comfort themselves with empty promises, with illusions of control, with the belief that they can halt what has already begun. But there is no stopping the tide. There is no turning back the clock. There is only the choice of whether to face the truth or be consumed by the lie. For those who can still see, for those who can still hear, for those who still have breath in their lungs and strength in their souls, there is still a moment to turn, still a chance to step away from the edge, still an opportunity to reject the deception that has ensnared the world. But the moment is fleeting. The opportunity is not eternal. The time is now, and soon the now will be no more. The deception has taken root in every corner of society, woven itself into the fabric of daily life, disguised itself as enlightenment, as progress, as freedom. It promises the world but delivers chains. It speaks of unity but breeds division. It offers fulfillment but leaves only emptiness. And yet the world drinks deeply from its cup, intoxicated by its promises, unwilling to acknowledge that it is being led to destruction. And those who speak against it, they are cast out, ridiculed, silenced. They are branded as enemies of progress, as obstacles to the new way, as threats to the carefully constructed illusion. But truth is not concerned with approval. It does not seek acceptance, does not require validation. It simply stands, unmoving, unshaken, waiting for those who are willing to open their eyes, willing to see beyond the veil, willing to acknowledge what has been before them all along. There is a reckoning coming, a revealing, an exposing of all that has been hidden. The darkness cannot conceal itself forever. The deception cannot sustain itself indefinitely. The world may deny it, may fight against it, may do everything in its power to suppress it, but truth will not be silenced. It will not bow to the will of those who wish to erase it. It will not fade into nothingness simply because it is inconvenient. It will rise, as it always has, as it always will. And when it does, there will be no more excuses, no more time to pretend, no more opportunity to turn away. The moment of decision will have passed, and the only thing left will be the weight of the choices that have already been made. The question will no longer be what could have been done, but what was done. The time of warnings will be over, and the only thing left will be the consequence of whether they were heeded or ignored. Even now, the signs are clear. Even now, the truth is evident. Even now, the choice stands before each soul, to see or to remain blind, to hear or to close the ears, to seek wisdom or to embrace the deception. The time for delay is gone. The moment for hesitation has passed. The weight of eternity hangs in the balance, and the world stands at the precipice. The voices of deception grow louder, more forceful, more demanding. They do not whisper anymore, they shout. They do not suggest anymore, they command. They do not ask for compliance, they expect it. And the world follows, not because it does not see, but because it does not want to stand alone. It is easier to go along than to resist, easier to comply than to question, easier to surrender than to fight. But easy is not always right, comfortable is not always safe. The path of least resistance is often the road to ruin, and those who choose it, who embrace the lie for the sake of peace, who trade their integrity for the illusion of security, they will find that what they gained was never worth the price they paid. The unraveling will not wait. The deception will not slow. The choice will not remain open forever. The weight of time grows heavier with each passing day. The urgency is undeniable. The moment is now. The call is clear. The question remains, who will listen? Who will see? Who will have the courage to stand when the whole world bows? The weight of this moment cannot be ignored. The unraveling is not a distant threat, but a present reality. The world stands at a crossroads, teetering between truth and deception, between wisdom and folly, between sight and blindness. The signs are all around, pressing against the edges of reality, demanding to be acknowledged. Yet so many continue to turn away, convinced that time is still on their side, that the warnings are exaggerated, that the unraveling can somehow be reversed. But truth does not wait. It does not adjust itself to the convenience of those who refuse to see. The tide has already turned. The shift has already begun. The path has already been chosen. And soon there will be no more time to reconsider, No more space for hesitation. No more room for second chances. The time to choose is now. The moment to awaken is now. The call to stand is now. And when the deception fully reveals itself, when the illusion crumbles, when the truth can no longer be denied, there will be no comfort in the choice to remain blind. The only question that will matter is this: did you see before it was too late?